With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the last discussion of the day one, a panel discussion on 5G, from trials to real-world deployments. I would like to invite Mansi Taneja, Associate Editor, ETTelecom, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Mansi.
Hello everyone, welcome to the panel discussion on 5G trials and real-world deployments. As we all know, 5G trials are already underway. Lab tests and trials are leading to concrete and locally relevant use cases across several sectors. We have an eminent set of speakers today to talk more about this topic. Let me now introduce you to our esteemed panelists. We have Mr. Kishore Babu, Deputy Director General at the Department of Telecommunications, Mr. Sandeep Gupta, who is EVP Network Strategy and Architecture at Bharti Airtel, Mr. Rajesh Singh, EVP Radio Technology Planning, Vodafone Idea. We are also joined by Mr. Saurabh Tewari, Director and CTO at Dell Technologies, Mr. Vinod Joseph, Technical Leader APG and China at VMWare, and Mr. Apurva, Head of Telecom, Media and Tech at ServiceNow. Let me start with you, Mr. Babu, to get the government perspective first of all. If you could elaborate on 5G use case development activity in India, we're talking so much about 5G networks and test use cases. Where do we stand currently?
Thank you. And first and foremost, let me acknowledge all the organizers, industry, and all the stakeholders. Now, as you rightly mentioned, we are moving from 5G technology trials, as well as the plans for deployment, as well as that how we can prototype and ideate as well as build relevant use cases. In fact, I see there's a lot of traction with regard to 5G use case development in the country beyond the requirements for a normal consumer. We see you touch it, education, health, mining, or logistics. You name the sector, there are very innovative use cases are coming and getting tried from the indigenous, stakeholders as well as global partners. Many use cases are being played not only in the technology trials, even at the lab level. And perhaps I want to also share something more happening from the government side. Unlike in the case of 4G, where deployment happened as well as when trials and deployment based on market dynamics. In this particular case, there is a kind of lot of proactive approach as well as proactive partnership from all the stakeholders. In fact, when you look at the 5G use cases alone, you might have heard about the Interministerial Committee formed by Department of Telecommunications with member technology as the chairman. There are 15 ministries have been enrolled into this. Like, for example, we're having agriculture, health, education, power, railways, ports and waterways, heavy industries, transport, commerce, mines, tourism, water resources, sports. In fact, I'm saying that these are the, entities where we are directly engaging how we can complement their digitalization plans as well as bringing in 5G capabilities in their realm of programs. We also see many other verticals as well as use cases which are being tried in the industry as well. Perhaps as we progress, I'm going to share more about that. And because we are also starting something called vertical engagement partnership program with the different industry members as a platform provider, I will share more in the at the next opportune moment. Thank you very much.
Sure. That was very insightful. Now let's move on to listen to the industry view. Sandeep, as you know, that 5G is around the corner. Telecom players are in the midst of trials and they're testing their networks. Firstly, how do you think 5G and telecom players' efforts towards digital transformation can change the whole landscape? If you could give some sort of insight into that. And Mr. Rajesh, I would like you to answer the same question as well.
Thanks, Mansi, first of all, for inviting us on this platform. It's a very pertinent discussion that we're having at this time, as Kishore Babuji mentioned, that the industry is coming together and maybe in more stronger terms than it was in the 4G era. But I think it will be right to acknowledge and the industry to acknowledge the efforts of telcos and telecom networks, which have played important role in realizing Prime Minister's vision of Digital India at this moment of time as well. I think mobile broadband networks are clearly the foundation of digital initiatives across industry domains, whether you talk about fintech, e-commerce, OTT, work from anywhere, e-healthcare, e-education, e-governance. I think so many domains that are really getting realized, which are basically putting India on the top of the digital economy and society in the world's map. We have 700 million plus smartphones, highest consumption in India, most affordable cost per GB for the users so that every stratum of the society can use these benefits of Digital India. And I think this platform or the whole mobile broadband platform will be the way to take India towards the 5 trillion economy. That's what we firmly believe. And I think 5G will play an important role there. And I'll maybe elaborate a little bit about what we see 5G bringing in benefits both for retail customers and enterprises. As it builds hyper capacities, lower latencies, higher concurrencies, I think in our trials, we have actually showcased that we can achieve more than 200 Mbps throughputs, even in 3.5 gigahertz band with more than 10 kilometers away from the site. So that basically shows the power of connecting the businesses and households in rural India with a 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. With 700 or sub gigahertz spectrum, we could achieve even more than 20 kilometers of cell range. That means the power is there for 5G to really connect India more intensively as compared to what 4G was able to do. And in millimeter wave, we've even seen Gbps throughputs, which means that the enterprises will have wireless fiber connectivities wherever they are. And I think these are the ways that we are building upon new use cases. We have recently demonstrated AR, VR-based immersive education, which basically becomes the foundation of the next generation metaverse experience. And I think not only this, if I say 5G, MEC, and AI, ML-based technologies, including cloud, are coming together at this time to really help transform the businesses, as Kishore Babuji just mentioned, as another initiative the industry is taking. And what is promising and what we've demonstrated is that 5G for businesses can really make an impact on how 5G will help enterprises transform, whether it is in the area of mining, as I say again, logistics, ports, the whole manufacturing, automobiles, a lot of domains where there is a clear benefit of 5G bringing in advantage or use cases that will really transform the way our enterprises will be efficient so that they're able to scale and compete at a global level and not just India level. And I think this is what the power of 5G that we see coming through.
That was quite interesting. Mr. Rajesh, if we can have your views on this as well.
Thank you, Mansi, and thanks all panelists here. And I just add what Sandeep was saying and Kishore Babu said just on 5G. It's a very important topic to understand how the 5G is going to evolve, especially, and thanks for DoT that who has given the experimental spectrum to do the trial and get the early exposure of this technology, developing the required competency skill in the organizations, as well as connecting to the partners, which is the Indian related, use cases need to be developed, and a lot of startups got connected and really got excited to connecting on the real platform and experimenting their use cases. So that was a very interesting side of this. Now let's come on the technology. We all know 4G has brought a lot of, at least broadband, 700 million people connected, as Sandeep has highlighted. But beyond this mobile broadband, this 5G is going to change, 3 other dimensions. We know EMBB, the first dimension, and which is going to be up for speed, will be further enhanced, capacity will be enhanced. But this 2 other dimension is very important. What is the URLLC, which is called ultra reliable, low latency capabilities? That's almost the real time capability we're building. We have tested in many use cases where especially the remote diagnosis, the health sector is going to be transformed. We can see how we have demonstrated many use cases, industry people have seen on the various platforms, that how ultrasound can be done in the remote places just by guidance by the doctor, because latency is negligible. It's real time almost. Similarly, in educations, a lot of things, it's a 3D dimensions can be added, image processing, and as experts from the bigger universities, colleges can teach the remote students. And we've seen this all capabilities now. It's almost 15 or 20 cases we have demonstrated and shown in the various platform. Then again, IoT uses the massive machine type communication. There's a third key dimension of the 5G was going to further transform. So these two key dimensions coming: ultra low latency, reliable and low latency, and then machine type communication, which is on top of what mobile broadband we used to understand till now. So this is where the whole paradigm shift is happening. And I think industry teams are joining with AI and machine learning capabilities. Further, there's a lot of architectural changes happening where we'll see the slicing as possible, so you can develop the private network. So it can create on the same physical network, multiple logical networks, and where the tailor-made networks can be created, and industry-specific use cases where you need mining or hazardous oil and gas, energy sectors. Those all can be, get the benefit of this private networks and can deliver the right quality of service, which would have been till now maybe challenges in this current existing technology of 4G. So we'll elaborate more in the coming forward in discussions. So I think this is where going through digital transformation and accelerate with the help of 5G, where already this is digital adaptation happening with the help of 4G, but of course 5G will accelerate further, leveraging this whatever new dimension of technology is coming to really transform the digital India. Thank you very much.
Sure. Let's move across to Saurabh, who is representing Dell Technologies here. Saurabh, let me ask you, of late, Dell Technologies have been focusing a lot on 5G. You have launched new solutions, offerings for customers. How do you see 5G update in India? What's the kind of potential and opportunities it offers?
Hey, Mansi, first of all, thanks so much for inviting us. And look, that's a great question. Look, before we start looking at 5G, let's quickly look at where we currently stand. So at this point in time, collaboration between the government, regulator, and operators has created a world-class and ubiquitous ecosystem, which forms the lifeblood of e-commerce, payments, transport, and public health. It caters to a populace, regardless of whether they are in a metro or a remote village. A lot of this is fueled by innovative startups, which are now established powerhouses without which we cannot imagine our daily routines, right? So one aspect is the customers which are building these newer apps, okay, with whom we collaborate on a daily basis, okay? And then from a technology perspective, 5G, will be an evolutionary improvement, which will enrich this ecosystem by providing higher bandwidth and lower latency. And almost every single current and future use case will benefit from these improvements. In fact, I'm positive that we will witness completely new use cases and businesses once 5G becomes as ubiquitous as 4G. And even more so when we start seeing 5G advanced networks. I mean, after all, it's said, necessity is the mother of invention. Now, let me answer the second part of your question, okay? 5G relies upon the multi-access edge computing to reduce latency and improve bandwidth. With it, we see the emergence of open radio access networks as well. A lot of people refer to them as ORAN. All of these use advanced algorithms based on AI and ML to continuously optimize digital signal processing and the added complexity that these new 5G network architectures bring in. So for the first time, operators and providers can exploit the rapid advancements in mainstream microprocessor technologies, accelerators, servers in radio networks. From a Dell Technologies point of view, we bring in the industry's most advanced hardware infrastructure, which efficiently, reliably, and most importantly, securely hosts 5G's continuously evolving software-defined network architecture stacks. Along with this, we add unparalleled global expertise from working with some of the most innovative telecom operators across all continents.
Right. Let's move on. Mr. Vinod, we are very close to launching 5G networks in India. There's so much buzz that's happening around, even in the Barcelona, that everyone was talking about 5G. So talking from the India perspective, how do you see 5G update in India, and what's the kind of opportunities and potential it offers for a player like you?
Thank you, Mansi, for having me, in this panel here. So absolutely, I think I second everything that the esteemed panelists have said here. I think the opportunity for 5G in India is massive, and I don't think the kind of scale and velocity of services that we're going to see getting launched in India is going to be seen elsewhere. We've seen a lot of the players launch their 5G services in the US and the Europe, but I think, it's mainly been a sort of one more G, if you may. So it's just been that sort of jump shift from 4G to 5G. We have just seen the enhanced mobile broadband services being sort of really launched. People are sort of starting to look at industry verticals to offer private connectivity and so on. But I think in India, the momentum is huge, right? And I think a couple of things. One is with COVID, the kind of impact that we saw in India, and especially the impact it had to the industries and everything that Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Kishore and Mr. Rajesh spoke about, starting from healthcare to education to manufacturing or mining. Now, all of this actually is going to get digitized. All of this is going to use 5G as a platform to launch, some of their key services and aspects there. So we're going to see private 5G becoming a very, very key aspect with anything that's going to happen in the country around Industry 4.0 and the transformation. The second thing that we are going to see is the massive scale of services that are going to get launched. And like Mr. Sandeep mentioned, you're going to have different kind of spectrum options provided for different services and so on. And what this brings to the table is the softwareization of infrastructure. And we as a company actually focus on opening up the infrastructure, disaggregating it, and actually having the building blocks that are software based. And what that really means is building your infrastructure based on open principles, cloud native principles, and disaggregating everything so that you're not going to have just one vendor or one provider there. It's going to be all about building an ecosystem of different partners that are aligned to the different industry requirements. So as an example, if I look at healthcare or if you look at manufacturing, you would have an ecosystem that is specifically aligned to that particular industry vertical, and you would have specialized ISVs who would actually play a major role there. So that's going to be one aspect where we as a company are going to be largely, playing a very pivotal role. The second aspect is going to be in terms of systems integration. Now, with 5G and massive scale, and like I said, disaggregation and opening up infrastructure, there is going to be a player or multiple players who need to come together to actually make this ecosystem work. So the need for systems integration capabilities and how do you stitch this together in creating value for a particular industry is going to be very important. So I think VMware as a company is also working with our own partners and bringing those capabilities to the industry to make sure that the aspirations of our CSP partners and our end customers are met, to allow them and help them to actually embark on this journey of creating opportunities and innovation towards, through software. So these are some of the things that we're actually working on. Last but not the least is to bring our experiences that we've had with other CSPs globally. So as examples, what has been our success with technologies like Open vRAN? What has been the use cases that we have deployed at the edge? What are those cutting edge applications that you need to be deploying for your enterprise customers or from industry verticals? What are the best practices you need to bring in with AI and ML techniques to actually automate the entire delivery of service and also remediate any issues that you see with your service or infrastructure? So these are learnings that we would like to bring back. And I think there are a lot of partnerships that we have with many of our customers. And we would like to bring those learnings as well to the industry.
Great. We will talk about learning, global learnings as we move forward. Apurva, if you can share your thoughts as well on this aspect. How do you see the uptake in 5G in India? Yeah.
Sure. I think, thank you for having me on the panel, first of all. And I think I would probably start off by saying what everybody else said, right? So I think everyone's kind of talking to the same opportunity. I think the connectivity that it's going to enable and the value that's going to be available to the ordinary citizen at the edge is going to be tremendous with 5G, right? I think what we're seeing is that, and not just in India, but other parts of Asia, we're also seeing the breadth and the reach of connectivity and good quality connectivity in areas where potentially fixed connectivity is not possible, is also a big opportunity in the consumer space, right? So I think that will hopefully beyond having 700 million people connected, we might be able to do even more, and we might be able to do better. So I think there's real public good that 5G can accomplish for India. When we talk to, the first step in 5G and adoption is really in the enterprise space. Everybody's talked about verticalization, the various use cases that come with it. And that's where the operators are going to be able to monetize 5G to start off with. So, but at the same time, there are significant benefits to end users on the back of that. So, interesting solutions in healthcare. We were looking at some interesting telemedicine solutions that are getting launched on the back of 5G, and how that is actually going to do greater good for the average human being. Mining. I did my education in Australia, so there's some pretty big miners there, and they're doing some really innovative things, leveraging the 5G connectivity and private 5G networks and things like that. But I think going back to what a couple of the panelists said, having that working ecosystem is key. So it's making sure that you're connecting your underlying connectivity layer to the infrastructure, to the software, to the edge, and then coming up with innovative solutions is key. And I think that's really the hard part. So interestingly, we were at MWC last week, and we gave a bit of a talk around the connected ecosystem and how that's really going to help harness the growth that we'll see coming through for operators using 5G. I think verticalization is the first step. The second step is really that openness, right? To have that open API ecosystem so that you can onboard, offboard software, hardware vendors, etc. You want it to be flexible, so you can actually leverage the right use cases for the right industry and the right technologies. And then finally, it needs to be sustainable, right? Any kind of investment that you do into an ecosystem needs to pay dividend over a period of time. I'm sure, a lot of the operators that are on this forum are probably still paying off the business cases for the 4G investments that have happened, right? So I think we need to make sure that, the payback on a lot of the investments that need to be made are also pretty effective and within sort of the single digit in terms of years of payback, not double digits, because then 6G, etc. will come through. But I think the opportunity is great. We can do some real good for humanity using this technology and what's coming. And we're pretty excited to partner with the operators as well as our vendor ecosystem to make sure we can drive value.
Right. Great. Pretty interesting point of view there. Let me go back to Mr. Babu. Sir, if you can tell us how Department of Telecommunications is ensuring a meaningful collaboration between users, industry, and various ministries. How do you think, what kind of value that can be achieved by a collaborative approach?
Thank you very much for asking the question. As previous speakers mentioned, the value addition is happening in different spheres, but in a more integrated manner. Like when we look at the networks, telecom is getting more softwareized, open networks, applications getting into the network. These are some of the key features which are bringing in different kinds of players into the 5G technologies and use cases. For example, for the last few years, we have been doing technology mapping in the country with regard to products, both the indigenous as well as global. And we have been looking at, who are all the solution developers, platform developers. And we were looking at, what kind of system integrators working with, Indian companies as well as the global companies. And of course, the, delivery is through telecom service providers. And the most important one is the user industries. We have been mapping all these entities that how 5G is taking shape or 5G is being perceived by different entities, developers, users, as well as integrators in a what's called in a continuous manner. And our experience is that there is a good amount of interworking is happening. And of course, there's a lot of efforts from 5G high level forum recommendations DoT has initiated. Like for example, when we looked at, there's a kind of more hand-holding required, or bridging is required between telecom service providers and product companies and solution developers. As part of the technology trials, we had so many presentations as well as interactions among these different entities so that they came to know each other. Okay, these are the kind of use case at ideation stage. These are the use case at prototype stage. These use cases are at the trial stage. So that kind of interaction among all these entities is continuously happening. And very recently, we also started something in a very big way, approaching the vertical industries directly, because the vertical industry is one ultimately who is going to adopt and create a demand. Like for example, some of the members mentioned about private 5G networks that enterprise needs, how 5G capabilities can contribute to. So when we looked at, when we started interacting with them, how as a win-win proposition, you can partner with all these ecosystem players, and what is that in return you can contribute in getting access to this big 5G world or 5G ecosystem. There was very, what's called proactive, or I should say, very dynamic response from the industries who are driving infrastructure, who are providing airports, who are providing power generation, distribution, mining, manufacturing, even the healthcare. So these entities are, we are bringing them into partnership program who will be having access to service providers trials, use cases directly, as well as system integrators, and vice versa. So through this platform, I once again invite, to all the audience, especially all the vertical industries, kindly do get in touch with us, and we are going to enable, access to the, this very comprehensive 5G ecosystem from ideation to the prototype to the trial. This is available to you. And as one of the previous speakers also mentioned, how DoT has facilitated experimental spectrum for the trials. So I also want to add, apart from experimental spectrum, for developing the use cases, you need a kind of lab environment. Where in the lab, apart from the bench testing, you also prototype the products at a very, very low power levels. Even this spectrum facilitation has been done in a very, I should say, with the objective of ease of doing R&D and ease of doing business, those objectives into consideration as driven by the top leadership. You may be aware that spectrum in India for R&D, or indoor demonstration, or indoor manufacturing, you can obtain it with 5,000 rupees per year through self-declaration. This is a kind of facilitation where a lot of, what's called regulatory compliance have been removed off to promote and encourage use case development at lab level as well as the trial level. So, and vertical engagement is another area where I am inviting all the members who are here and who are listening to approach as, get in part of this particular group so that, you get access to 5G, ecosystem. Thank you.
That's a very great approach taken by the government, and I'm sure it will have good results. Now let's move on to talk about some global insights. If you have some global insights, trends on 5G network, some use cases you can talk about which are relevant to the Indian market.
Oh, absolutely. So look, the network standard, the 5G network standard is continuously evolving. It is defined by 3GPP, which comprises of a collaboration across nations, across organizations, carriers, equipment providers, and people like us as well. Okay, so what's really happening is that newer release 16, 17, and 18 networks, which in fact define the newer 5G advanced standards, which will be the precursor to 6G, add a spectacular set of functionalities, like 5G networks using low Earth orbiting satellites, creating non-terrestrial networks for a truly ubiquitous network covering mountains, oceans, and forests. Now look, India is a very large and geographically diverse country, and satellite connectivity for mobile can make networks hugely more effective at contributing to, let's say, remote telemedicine, farming, banking, disaster management, public health, telemetry, railways, petroleum, shipping, remote sensing. I mean, the list is practically endless. We're seeing even more capable Industry 4.0 with newer terminals specializing in machine-to-machine communication. A newer generation of devices called reduced capability devices is defined in release 17, which reduces equipment complexity and significantly increases battery life, crucial for sensor-based applications. These and many more advances will adds significant value to the Indian market overall.
Vinod and Apurva, since your companies are like kind of global firms, let's hear from you. What are the kind of global insights and trends do you see in 5G networks? How do you think some of the use cases and networks can be relevant for the Indian market, considering India is totally different from other countries?
After you, Apurva, good.
Yeah, sorry, I might give a couple of interesting use cases and then I'll hand over to you, Vinod.
Sure.
So the first one is really the access to good connectivity is what we're seeing, and I touched on that briefly. So, you know, I mentioned I was in Australia a while back, but what Australia has done is they've actually deployed like a fiber on top of copper network. The government has deployed national broadband network in Australia, right, to improve connectivity. But unfortunately, the spend ended up being a lot more than what they expected because the reach of the country is quite large. And what we found was a lot of the remote areas did not get the level of connectivity that they were expecting. So, you know, there is fiber to the home, but it's fiber sitting on top of a legacy copper network. So it doesn't quite do the trick in terms of, you know, the modern connectivity expectations that users have. So, you know, we're talking with the likes of Telstra and Optus and a couple of other operators over there, where they're actually looking at 5G as being a channel to win a lot more business away from the traditional sort of fixed network broadband connectivity, right? And providing a good quality, you know, low latency network to the end users in remote areas. And, you know, when we talk about verticalization, they're doing some really interesting things in terms of farming applications and stuff like that. You know, there was a edge use case with IoT sort of sensors on cows and stuff we were hearing in sort of far North Queensland, where they were actually tracking grazing patterns to milk production and stuff like that. So I know that probably doesn't need 5G, but I think they need good connectivity so that they can get real-time insights, which will then get them to do to drive their business in the right direction. So that's one. And then the other one was really, we're seeing a big uptake with enterprises getting involved and, you know, talking to large network operators around private 5G virtual networks, and especially in the likes of mining and some of those use cases. We have a very strong relationship with the NTT Group. And in the US, we just signed an agreement where ServiceNow is being used as the workflow platform for order support and assurance for 5G private networks, and building that ecosystem where new edge applications can be onboarded, offboarded in a really agile fashion, so that you know, NTT Group can add value across the various industries that they're targeting. And having the ability to launch these 5G networks in a fairly agile fashion, turn on revenues pretty quickly, really helps top line growth. And we just had a recent announcement 2 weeks ago, but we're already starting to see you know, some serious conversations going on in some of the sort of Western countries like the UK and the US at the moment, and Japan, of course. So there are a couple of areas where we're seeing some good, interesting use cases on the back of 5G deployments already. Yeah, Vinod, over to you.
No, absolutely agree with whatever you said, and I think a couple of things that we are seeing as trends. One is the adoption of Open vRAN or Open RAN, and what that really means, actually, Mansi, is that you're able to now create an ecosystem of radio access network vendors, and it gives you the ability to program the network. And why this becomes important is because when you provide mobile private connectivity, or private 5G as they call it, you know, what are the value add that you bring to that? You know, as a CSP, what are the specific use cases or innovations can I bring to the radio infrastructure? With ORAN and what we call as a RAN intelligent controller, you're starting to see use cases where you can program the network to actually achieve better spectral efficiency, more bandwidth, and better end user performance, predictability based on where the user is in terms of a cell site or across cells. So all of this kind of comes in very handy when you want to offer value-added services to your consumers, or even to private 5G. So that's something we are seeing a lot of momentum on. And I think this is kind of developing. So you have players here who are building specific industry-aligned solutions on the O-RAN specific to private 5G or public 5G. And this list is going to keep growing as we speak. Very recently in MWC, we made an announcement with Dish Wireless that we're actually trialing the RAN intelligent controller for a spectrum of different use cases. So that's something which we are working with our other partners as well here. So that's one of the areas we see a lot of traction on. The second is at the network edge. And I think the edge is becoming even more important for anything that you want to offer. And when you talk about enterprises here, when you look at enterprises, we spoke about Industry 4.0, but what about the other enterprises like banks or financial institutions or software houses? Now, all of them have specific asks and requirements where a lot of their applications or services now can be moved from in-house to the network edge. And when you move it to the network edge, you can actually fulfill your SLAs or KPIs that are needed by the customers of these enterprises. So you can actually build and host those applications at the edge and also provide the needed developer tools that are required by these enterprises. So for instance, you can package a set of tools and capabilities that the applications can use to either modernize them or actually use multiple cloud infrastructures here at the edge, right? So this is another dimension that we are seeing. And talking about the edge, there is another industry which is the media and broadcasting industry, which is also, leveraging the edge infrastructure to deploy their services or softwareize their services. And we have few of our partners like SK Telecom in South Korea, who's deployed a edge native infrastructure, as we call it, to actually cater to the media and broadcasting segment, where all of the infrastructure building blocks are softwareized. So I think the edge obviously is the next big market here. The third obviously is going to be the enterprises or even the home users who want to use 5G to connect to their branch offices or to central sites. And obviously, the likes of SD-WAN and SASE services, the secure access and secure edge services become extremely important, because how do I protect the integrity and privacy of an end user? How do I ensure that I'm able to package all of the required security building blocks for the enterprise customers and actually have them have seamless access to their corporate data or corporate data center? So this is another facet that we are going to see. So I think these are three areas that I see a lot of synergies on, especially on the 5G side.
Great, excellent. Let's move on to the operator side. Sandeep and Rajesh, both if you can elaborate on this aspect, on the use cases which are relevant to the Indian market. There's a lot of talk about industry IoT, there's mobile brand. But what are the other use cases? We have listened to the speakers, they are talking about many sectors, but from an operator's point of view, which are the use cases or the sectors you think will revolutionize the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, Mansi, let me just share our thoughts, and I'll give back to you, Rajesh. So I think just speaking about private networks per se, to start with, one thing that we're doing at Airtel is making things very simple, like what we did in retail market. We're making the private network as a service to the enterprises. So they don't have to really worry about what's under the hood, so to say. They will basically be able to embrace this technology with minimum of hurdles in terms of the adoption by making it a very simple network as a service model. Second aspect within that, I think talking about the use cases, what we've seen is use cases are built which are cutting across all the industries that we just talked about in the past. Few of the panelists talked about, Kishore Babuji talked about the vertical integration with vertical industries. What we're doing is making it simple 4-stack model. The first stack is pure connectivity in the location where you need it, whether it's a coverage capacity, on-prem voice, on-prem data, or off-prem voice or off-prem data, whatever that be, that's a basic connectivity layer. Beyond these are the 3 layers which are more to do with asset information or asset location. Whether this is assets about your people, it's asset about your inventory, assets maybe you're about the movement of vehicles in the campus. So that's about the asset information or location. On top of which is asset management in terms of improving efficiency of the assets that you have, which again cuts across multiple type of assets that the enterprises have across these vertical domains. And the fourth one is bringing in video analytics, which basically clubbed with the AML and the edge compute is going to bring more quality-driven decisions or drive more quality in these and efficiency in these organizations or in these use cases. So I think it's a very simple mantra. These are the 4 stacks clubbed with network as a service, makes it very simple for private networks and enterprises to adopt these private networks. The way we are seeing it is that we have now more, I would say, programmable solutions as being talked about. We are embracing ORAN, and we are talking about network in a box type of solution that can go to the on-prem location for the private networks for them to be able to use this more efficiently. But if they want any of these solutions to be on-prem or off-prem, we have full flexibility based upon the software programmability that we can provide in these type of private networks that we are already seeing building up in the Indian industry. Rajesh, please add on.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. I think you have broad brushed it on the overall use cases. But I think it's very difficult to predict a particular use case in Indian market. But yes, as a platform is available, so a lot of engagement is on. And I think as Sandeep was highlighting, this private 5G network, the private network is going to be a real, seems to be, which is not kicked off yet in this Indian market, will be require, a lot of accelerations, the capability, the way it's coming in. And it's one box solution, and it's an end-to-end. I think Vinod was talking about the ORAN and programmable radio. So all is getting adopted currently in Indian market. It's getting experimented. We are in touch with all the ecosystem providers. We have tested it, trialed it, and now it's a service part it's available. So that's the one key area it looks like, where programmable radios, there's enhanced services, tailor-made, customized requirements will be met. Then what is the traditional radio you keep on developing till now? And then of course private slicing, because slicing is the new capability which is coming in. That's where the multiple logical network will be there, and with the particular quality of service, required latency, required throughput, required capacity and coverage, those all can be delivered in the right space. The other, in Indian countries, you would say agriculture is the area which also is require a lot of attention, because a lot of economy is where 70% population lives on the agriculture is also need to be seen in. And we have engaged with the few partners on the use cases developing, especially the rural areas, the cattle management, the asset management. So more productive you can be, because and warehouse management. So all this capability is being built with services available to enterprises or agriculture sector. And of course, vertical integration is the must kind of thing which will happen in the 5G. Till now, it's not happened because maybe the capacity and the requirement was not enough to manage this, because you already had a lot of consumer requirement was very large. The uses of the data was very high in their market. So that much capacity to build this enormous use cases, enterprise cases was difficult maybe. But 5G unleashing this all, where the capacity is getting unleashed, the latency is almost getting nullified, and it's almost the real time. So all this will use cases is being, I think we have developed already 15, 20 very simple use cases. Partners are engaged, and they're now more or less able to commoditize once it is, networks or commercial networks are being made available. I think another key thing on the use cases, what we see, even the last mile connectivity, as people have said here, the good connectivity is also required good coverage. So the last mile connectivity, where millimeter wave also might be coming, the fixed W access can also be good use cases where the fiber is not able to reach, and through 5G networks able to connect the last mile with the high throughput, high speed requirements. So that will also unleash the areas where you couldn't reach the different use cases that you will to manage on the CPs, home broadband solutions, not able to reach till now, but it's will to a lot of connectivity, new area will get developed.
Let me come back to Mr. Babu now. Sir, let's talk about the test bed that DoT has funded. DoT has funded the development of an indigenous 5G test bed that's been driven by academia. So first of all, how do you see the collaboration between academia and the industry? Where will it reach? And if you could also give us some sense of the new test beds that are being planned.
Thanks very much for asking that question. I was wondering, okay, I missed that point to mention in my previous intervention. Thanks. Testbed is one thing, very important, especially to bring a kind of collaborative activity between an idea, prototyping, as well as validating to ensure that, it fits into the network. So when you look at this IIT Madras Consortium testbed, it's one of the very bold step from Government of India and visionary step where around 224 crores have been invested to build an indigenous end-to-end testbed, which we can call it as a white box testbed where people can go there and take their algorithm level, subsystem level, at a module level they can replace and test. Okay, it is fit into the overall 3GPP configuration and standards process. And another thing is that the charges are also made very affordable for with key focus on startups and SME ecosystem, so that it is accessible and affordable to them for their testing. And the testbed is almost ready, and it is in the process of unraveling to the industry's views. And another very interesting thing is that one is about making the testbed available for testing the products and solution. And the second thing is about making the testbed technologies for commercialization. There's also an important area where the academia consortium are actively driving and already working with some of the industry partners with regard to code, RAN, how they can take it to the next level. Because it's a prototype one, as of now, what has been developed, taking to the commercial level, they will be taking the technology transfer and they'll be working further to make it at the carrier grade level. And apart from the government efforts, I really want to acknowledge again through this platform, the industry members as well as technology companies in the country, that even they are setting up their own private testbeds, especially taking advantage of government's liberalized experimental spectrum policy for indoor R&D and indoor manufacturing framework. We hear that more than 6 to 8 testbeds have come up in the private sector, where they are working not only for their purpose. This I'm saying that excluding the telecom service providers who also have their own testbeds from the OEMs to try and test and make these use cases more robust and field deployable category. So as previous speakers mentioned, even in the case of verticals, who are all the user industries, even they are deploying these test beds so that they are working along with their global partners and global entities about maturing the use cases, and not only for Indian needs but also for the global needs. That's a good thing, that where we are building competencies both in academia, industry, as well as global innovation centers in India to develop use cases not only for India but also for the international markets.
Right, so that was quite insightful. Now, I'm so sorry we are running out of time, so I'm directing this last question to all the panelists. Everyone is so gung-ho about 5G, and you're talking about 5G network. There's so much of momentum, but I just want to ask everyone, in such a ever-changing digital world, what kind of challenges do you see in managing the network security? How big would that be? If Sandeep, you can start by answering that.
Security is always a concern when things are getting connected. Open APIs are getting there. Open source information or systems are based upon open information or open codes, as we've been talking about virtualization and the openness of radio networks or core networks. We as an operator have already have a platform which is the Security Operating Center, which is making sure that everything that we're deploying in our network, be it on our prem or at enterprise prem, is completely secure in terms of the type of networking, the type of security protocols, the encryption, the 3GPP-based defined algorithms are completely adhered to, and there is a complete adherence and regulation inside the organization for a routine security checkup for the complete network.
Right.
We obviously have to see how the devices which are coming to the network are more secure, because a lot of security starts from the end edge of the of the network, which is where the open market devices, the IoT devices will have to come up in a more secure manner inside the network, and they don't bring these security loopholes, for which all again we are working very closely with the device manufacturers, also with IoT partners and industry players where we kind of offer a certification program for the private enterprises, especially who bring in the IoT devices, to get their IoT devices certified from security and interworking with the network if they so require. But overall, we are able to detect even the security challenges on the open device side based upon the security operating center that we have.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mansi, just to add on, I think it was very well envisaged, when the 5G was coming, that due to more openness and the open interfaces coming in, there will be quite huge challenge and it will be complex in nature. And as well as same time, when the ORAN and all started coming in and more softwareization has happened and open source has come, challenge was continuing in the networks. But it's good that is a part of our trial. The security testing also was the key criteria was set by the government, and we are demonstrating those security capabilities. And as Sandeep highlighted, as for 3GPP standards, all the security complexity is very detailed testing is going on. We're able to set the architectures, configurations that all security threat can be taken care of. And it's not only that up to platforms and open interfaces, even the SIMs going to be changed in the 5G, and the SIMs are also coming with the more better security capabilities, but more algorithm, but more complexities on an air interface that was required on the protects the even security on the air interface as well. So this is all taken care of. I think people are working on this. They're evolving, exploring, and testing as well, and certifying each and every interfaces with all current ecosystem, the vendors, partners, as I talk about the same vendors, even the device management systems also is being made capable to take care of this openness, and new customized solution was going to offer to the customer. So I think we're going forward. Technology always has the challenges, but yes, as being platforms are available, ground testings are available, it's well known. It has been norms have been set up as per different various security requirements, and those being demonstrated. And as you go in, you will evolve on that, and you will well prepared before this technology will adopt.
After once 5G is launched, what kind of security challenges do you see in the network? Will that be a big challenge, or it's just like there's so many talks and nothing will happen?
Mansi, that's another incredibly relevant question. Look, what happens is that with Industry 4.0, we progress towards connecting every piece of equipment that can possibly be connected, starting with robots, devices, sensors. We're looking at connecting billions of devices, okay? And this dramatically increases the attack vector and surface. Now, fortunately, technologies like network slicing in 5G, they intrinsically define methods that not only improve network performance, but also isolate slices, making them less vulnerable. So it's becoming increasingly difficult for one part of the network, if it even gets compromised, to go ahead and compromise or result in vulnerability of another section of the network. Okay. In addition to that, we're using AI and ML-based stacks, which enable us to detect and even preempt threats, effectively neutralizing them before they can cause any damage. Now, from an infrastructure perspective, we at Dell Technologies have brought in several industry firsts into our products, and we routinely define and contribute to global security standards. In addition, we've pioneered the concept of supply chain security and implemented it across our production facilities. So we're one of the first hardware infrastructure providers to actually have a production facility in India. So we've been making in India for a very long time. Okay, so with these measures in place, we're very confident that 5G in India will not only provide better connectivity than 4G, but will be significantly more secure as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Vinod, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think the most important aspect is to make the distinction between open source and open standards, because being open source is great, but at the same time, you also have to align to the industry standards, 3GPP or ETSI or any other industry standards that defines the security parameter and the boundaries as to how they should work. That's the first aspect. I think the second aspect is also to keep adherence to some of the industry security benchmarks like CIS, which is the Center of Internet Security, or NIST. These are generic guidelines that have been actually built, not just generically for 5G, but for any application security. And I think, like Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Rajesh mentioned, the moment you start deploying everything on software, the scale and the distribution becomes fairly large. And you have to look at these as traditional applications because they are no longer appliances. These are applications that could be highly mobile. Today, they might be in one edge data center. Tomorrow, they might be relocated to another edge data center, or that application may move to another cloud altogether, right? So how do you ensure that that security packaging and frameworks actually go with the application itself? You don't need to do the replumbing again. So I think that's another important aspect as well. And I think security, will have to reassess this time and again. So, today what is being done may be outdated 6 months or 12 months down the line. So we have to keep revisiting the architectures that are evolving, and all of what we are talking around ORAN or the edge. Many of these APIs and architectures continuously tend to evolve. They are getting fine-tuned as we speak. So we need to revisit that periodically to see what needs to be done there. And just one last point around endpoint security. I think that's the most important aspect, because the moment you permit a end user or a user equipment or an end user application to actually create some sort of a issue or some sort of a violation on your data center or application, then that's a big problem. So I think perimeter security or endpoint security also is important here. Yeah.
I think maybe one last comment, right? I think I agree with everything the other panelists have said. The attack surface with 5G is just expanded exponentially, right? Because you're actually adding so much complexity with the edge, with the software vendors, with even IoT, right? Inherently, IoT is not designed, it was designed with manufacturing in mind, not so much security and networks and communications in mind, right? So the other challenge with 5G is also like faster data extraction. So, if somebody does get access, they can extract a ton of data and cause a lot of business risk. I think one of the areas that we see organizations, and we work pretty closely with Airtel as well, but is they're getting the IT teams working with the security teams and the network organizations on a common platform. So if you've got the ability to actually react fast when you notice a threat or when you notice some sort of vulnerability, and not have the risk of being passed around across systems and tools and applications to actually address that risk, is also critical. So making sure that workflows effectively across the various business functions to address security challenges. And I do realize in the network space, a lot of that workflows will be automated, right? When it comes to 5G, just to handle scale. But I think as soon as you have identified some sort of vulnerability or risk, the ability to actually react to that proactively with the right people is also critical to, and having that posture to start off with is critical to overcome some of these threats that will occur.
Right. So I think that's it. We have come to the end of our panel discussion. It was quite an insightful one. Thank you to all the panelists, and I hope we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for bringing out the best from the sessions and for giving us some very valuable content. Indeed, a lot to take away and implement. With that, we have come to the end of the day one of the ETTelecom, the 5G Congress 2022. I would like to thank our industry veterans for sparing their precious time for this conclave. Truly, your presence made this event successful. Thank you to the audience for being interactive. Finally, thanks to our partners for showing confidence in us. Hope to see you all tomorrow for the day 2 with many more interesting sessions and discussions. Till then, take care and stay safe.